Hello, everyone. Let me introduce my very good friend, Nick Strauss-Klein, who has amazing stories to tell about working over the years as a Feldenkrais teacher and practitioner. And he has been kind enough the last 4 years to invite me to come to Minneapolis to teach a group of people from the Midwest region. I think it's the Midwest region, isn't it?
hmm
And I'm going to
Mostly
be,
locals to the Twin Cities area in
yeah,
Minneapolis, St. Paul. But yeah, we got some people from further out.
I'm going to be there in Minneapolis on May 20th to the 25th, teaching a part of an ongoing workshop that's uh, titled Illuminating Your Skeleton, with some very, very new information in it, and about how to not only practice and work with the awareness through movement process, but also to bring that level of detail into your functional integration lessons. And so Nick has been around me since, I don't know, we first met in New York.
Yeah, it was like 2009, maybe something like that, 2008.
Yeah, a day or two ago.
Yeah.
So Nick, why do you keep inviting me back there?
Well, I think I told the story before. In that first time that I think that first time that I met you, you made a really big impression on me with particularly your work with a lesson I've come to call activating the arches. I forget what you call it, but it was a workshop ostensibly designed around learning how to carry the head in FI, to work with holding the head. But an enormous part of the weekend was organizing how our feet interact with the ground and how we bring the support of the ground up into our skeletons. And I found that work really changed my understanding and my specificity about myself. It actually helped me get over some issues I had had just walking around New York City in on the concrete in shoes that probably weren't as smart as I know about shoes now. And I had some knee pain and some foot pain, and this one weekend workshop with you really cleaned that up, and I felt much better and noticed my practice improving too, and my work with Feldenkrais students. And so I was always intrigued, and I ended up creating my own version of that lesson and posting it online. And it was actually the first thing I ever recorded for what is now the Feldenkrais Project. It remains one of our most popular lessons. It's always sort of in the top 10 I can see. So it's just very important work. And then there was the years of raising little kids, and then the years of the plague. And as we came out of that, I realized I wanted to reconnect with you and learn more, because I had caught in your marketing and your stories about what you've been working on in the trainings that you've been offering. I've been catching little senses that this work had matured in you, and then you had more to offer on these themes of organizing the skeleton and specificity. And so that's why my colleague Sarah Baumert and I invited you to the Twin Cities, and we had a wonderful first training 3 years ago, and now we're gearing up for our third. It's been great.
So, uh, this idea of working from the ground up and organizing your skeleton and finding the support through your feet, it's not particularly common in the Feldenkrais world. And so, can you talk a little bit about specifically how? I mean, that's been a major theme for when I've been coming to Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So, what have you and your colleagues been finding in relationship to that specificity of the notion of being able to lift through ourselves?
Yeah, I think that the first thing that I took from you in the first year back here in Minneapolis, this 3 years ago now, this feeling of it doesn't have to be that we language or image our idea of interacting with the ground with sort of an over and down or a pressing into the ground in order to move yourself.
Yeah.
That if we, in fact, just change our language and thinking and eventually the image of how we're interacting with the ground to a more of a sense of drawing its clarity up into ourselves, well, then we're actually, I think, closer to the evolutionary forces that have been at work on the skeleton, right? So I just noticed in that first training with you 3 years ago that simply that you weren't saying press the floor with your foot. You know, you're
Right.
lying on your back, you've got one or both knees bent. The language was never push the floor. And of course, most of these, supine one knee bent lessons, there's so many different genres of them, but we usually say, step into the ground, push into the floor and turn. And I've got many teachings like that I offer on my own website. But I joked kind of right away as I felt the potency of this over those couple of days. I think I said this in the end of that first training in front of the group. I said, I feel like I got to re-record all my old stuff. I haven't done that, but I've instead sort of made addendums and some kind of program notes saying, hey, once you've learned it this new way that I've been teaching the last 2 years now, this lifting up and through sense is the language I've really latched onto for that. Then go back to any of these Feldenkrais lessons and run the experiment yourself. Figure out for yourself, does it make a difference if your internal language and image is I'm pushing the ground compared to I'm lifting away from the support of the ground. I'm lifting myself. I'm lifting. So you're, lying on your back, one knee bent. Is it push the foot or is it lift the hip away from the foot? Right. And
Yeah.
that just that alone starts the kind of cascade of very different, significantly different organization for how you use everything, your legs, your hips, your back, the rotation off the standing foot. It's been profound. And I've ended up publishing an entire series on this now that I call grounding for liftoff. This idea of being connected to get into what you want to do in the world.
No, you sent me one of those lessons and it was so beautifully taught. I was jealous.
Oh, thank you. Well, learning from the master here.
No, well, I don't think so. I think we're all just feeding each other if we investigate this and really stay in the world of investigation.
Yeah, that's right.
The other thing that's really been important to me is changing the way that we utilize our attention. Oftentimes when we're doing an ATM lesson and we have our foot on the ground, so we lift our foot to, we're lying with our back, we're supine, we bring our foot to standing, we stand our foot on the ground, which is different than organizing yourself so that your foot is engaged with the ground and prepared to move or prepared to act. It's different. But how do you watch yourself do that? Do you watch yourself as if you're outside yourself, watching yourself perform the act? Or do you shift your attention into this particular close to your skeleton sense as if you're experiencing the lesson from the inside out? And that's a major change in themes that I'm continuing to bring into my lessons now as to where are you in your attention? When you bring your hands together, well, am I outside myself watching my hands come together? Or am I literally inside the skin envelope? Am I actually inside? Have I illuminated the bones? Am I actually bringing the internal sense from the inside out? And so my mind is quietly observing rather than watching from the outside. It's a completely different experience of how we move. So that's something I'll be bringing to Minneapolis as to how to experience that level of, how we place our attention when we're in the awareness to movement process.
Mm. I love the focus on the sort of immediacy of the experience.
Right.
It's so easy for Feldenkrais practitioners and in seasoned Feldenkrais students. It's still easy for us to be almost narrating what we're doing or hearing the narration and adding our own. And there is this sort of image of figuring out the lesson, of following the words, of describing to ourselves what we're doing, but it's not the same as the actual palpable experience of it and that reorienting of attention
Right.
into the level of the actual experience of sensation. That's
Right.
all we ever have, but we just layer on top of it all of these sort of abstractions.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy to take if we're lying supine, it's so easy to have our attention. If you say move your shoulder blade, it's so easy to have the sensation that you're moving the shoulder blade relative to the surface. So you have the experience if you're moving your shoulder blade relative to the surface. How often do you have the sensation of being inside of your ribs and experiencing reaching back into the inner part of the shoulder blade and moving your shoulder blade from the inner surface of your shoulder blade and experiencing that and experiencing the relationship of the space inside your ribs to the inner aspect of your shoulder blades? Well, that's a completely different experience than when you arise, when you lift yourself from that and you're that that present to the inner experience from the inside out, it changes radically the way that you experience yourself in space, in the environment, and the sense of composure within yourself.
Mm.
So this question of changing the narrative is, I think, a very, very important step for us in going through these lessons.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the connection from, so you've had me thinking for years more about foundation forces of movement than this is a kind of older language I used to use, than thinking more about the foundation than the part that I'm moving. So, so if you're lying on your back and you interlace your fingers and you lift your head, are we thinking about lifting the head, or are we thinking about how the middle back, the shoulders roll down and interact with the ground, the surface of sort of using the ground to create action, which we're
Yeah.
always doing, but really bringing that to the surface of our attention. How does that kind of teaching interact with this more inner sense that you're describing now? Because this work of yours is newer to me. I'm not as familiar.
Right. Well, I'm evolving this. I mean, I've been for the last number of years since COVID, since I started reteaching my lessons. So I've got over 400 and I don't know 410 lessons that I've taught since COVID started, something like that. Maybe a few more. I don't know, but uh, I start off with teaching, standing over your leg, standing, moving. How do you find yourself over your hip joint? How do you find yourself on the floor? How do you find yourself? And but the pressure would be, there would still be the question of how do I lift myself? And then when I start to lift, well, how do I find the points of support? How do I learn to utilize the support so that the support continually makes it so that the notion is very simple, that in order to have an even distribution of tone throughout the whole of ourselves, we have to utilize the support surface accurately, and we have to learn to change the use of the support surface. So instead of rolling over ourselves, it becomes a question of how do I roll under myself? How do I bring the center of mass under myself so that everything else is light because I have the support? So that's been with me for a while, but the question of uh, instead of having my attention to my ribs and my back to the surface and rolling up through the relationship with the surface, how is it for me to actually go inside of my ribs and watch the way that I engage from the inside of myself into the surface and use the surface? And that's a change. And that's only been happening in the last 6 months that I've really, really changed. I'm continually working to evolve the way that I present these lessons. Um, there's some force within me that wants to continue to relanguage these lessons in a way that brings about not only a different attention, but a different quality of autonomy and composure for the person who's living in the lessons, who's experiencing life within the lessons, who's living life from the inside out, and especially in these times to meet the conditions in the uncertainty of the conditions we're in. How do we find that internal sense that I am complete and intact within myself?
Mm.
And so that I become identified with my sense of wholeness, and I don't need to be so involved in the uncertainty.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I don't have to pay attention to the uncertainty. I do, because my own survival value is being tested. But it's the question of the composure I'm going to have to meet the uncertainty that we face.
You started by asking why do I keep inviting you back, right? And actually, I think that the broader answer has something to do with what you were just saying, that this organizing ourselves to, or capability to meet a chaotic world,
Yeah.
understanding how do we bring our resources to the next unknown moment, to the idea that everything is continually novel. And something else you said about, you find yourself compelled to reteach these lessons in new ways that you're constantly refining. I think that's the only way that we teach anything in an authentic way. I think
Right.
that, you are you're driven through your own human curiosity through your years with Feldenkrais towards refinement, making the world a better place, refining yourself however you can. And so you get more and more detailed understandings of these subjective experiments that you play in your own life with your own self. And how do we bring them to others? So I think there's something very primary about novelty
Right.
in what's got me excited about your work. And I hear a new take on that right now.
Yeah, it's novel for me. It continues to and it is such a test to my language that I've always used in teaching. I have to continually be in the place of a continual editing of it's so easy to say please stand on your foot, please stand on your leg, please stand on yourself, or please sit on the stool. It's and to find a way of saying please organize yourself in such a way that your leg is supporting you. It's a lot more words. It's a lot more words, but when you really understand what it means to organize your leg in such a way that your torso and head are supported, that is a completely different point of balance than trying to organize your torso over your leg and to try to find equilibrium and stability then.
Right.
And the accuracy with which you can find the support. So basically, we're inviting a few more people to come and join us in Minneapolis. That's part of the reason why we're having this conversation.
Okay.
Don't you think that would be a good idea to have a few more people join us?
I think that could be great.
So tell people a little bit about the workshop, what to expect.
So it's a 4-day advanced training. May 21st, I believe, is a Wednesday, and it goes through the 24th, the Saturday, for the regular 4 days of the advanced training. There will be, I believe, a public workshop. Do we decide the night before? Is that Tuesday
Tuesday
night?
night.
The 20th. And then the 5th day of the workshop is FIs. So Jeff will be teaching, what, 5 FIs maybe that day, something like 5.
Yeah.
And practitioners can come to observe those FIs too.
And that's good food.
Oh,
That's a good meal.
yeah. Yeah. No, I think we will all be heartily full at the end of that. And watching you teach at the end has been a real capstone to these last 2 years. We've talked this year, Jeff, we haven't settled on these plans, but Sarah and I were talking about bringing perhaps 1 or 2 of our own FI students for you to work on in the context of those first 4 days, so that you're not working with a practitioner, so that you're working with a member of the public, modeling that process for us, modeling your process for us, and linking that into the topics of the workshop. Does that
I
still sound
would,
like a good idea?
yeah, that's wonderful. And I would say that there's a particular dynamism, there's a dynamic in the way that I work with people that, it's a value for Feldenkrais teachers who want to continue to extend and grow their practice. It's to watch the way that I am in dialogue with the students. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would love to. I'd love to see that.
sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. So let's how do people get a hold of you and Sarah?
Oh, let's see. I guess you could just reach out to me through the Feldenkrais Project. I'm Nick at feldenkrais project.com. Sarah, I believe, is Sarah at bodymatter.com, but I didn't prepare to look at that, so I'm not sure.
No, not worries, not a
Yeah.
worry.
Yeah, you can track us down.
You can track us down. All right. So if anybody, I'm at jeff@insidemoves.org. So if anybody wants to track me down and find out about this too, it would be lovely to have you join us. We have this beautiful space in this church that we work in, and it's a very nice environment to study functional integration and awareness through movement in. So
The space is amazing. I just talked to a previous participant this morning who was saying one of the reasons he was coming back is he just enjoyed being there, physically there too, in
right.
addition to the wonderful teaching.
Well, it's a church, but we provide our own I don't know, our own serenity, our own inner tranquility when we're there. It's a lovely experience. So
Yeah, it's been great. Looking forward to it so much, Jeff.
all right. So Nick, thank you. I look forward to being there in May. It's coming right up.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
All right.